I think, and I think Ali is out on some well-deserved PTO, so I don't think we should wait on him. But I think we have most of our regular crew already here, so I think probably let's just start. So this is a meeting of our monthly meeting of the TAG Contributor Strategy Mentoring Working Group. This is an official CNCF meeting, so the code of conduct applies. Oh, I started too soon. Hello, Paris. So the code of conduct applies, which we like to paraphrase to be excellent to each other. So thank you all for coming today. I know you're all busy, so this is very much appreciated. And we do have a fairly packed agenda today. So I think I'm going to go straight on because I don't see any new faces. Well, actually, there are a couple of new faces to this meeting. So maybe I'll just do a quick suggestion that we do just a very brief round of introductions. Do folks think that would be appropriate, or do we know each other well enough to skip that?
Recognize most of the faces except maybe JT's. And I'm new to this meeting, but I've been on the contributor growth and contributor strategy meetings for the past little while. I'm Diane Mueller with Bitergia, formerly with Red Hat, and a colleague of, I think he's on this side of my face, Josh. And Rian, I think I've met everybody else in Paris, I know, and Catherine.
Okay. Does anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Yeah. Kia ora koutou, ko JT Motoku Ingoa. My name is Jay. I'm co-chair of the Mentoring Working Group alongside Nate, based in New Zealand, working with II, and yeah, just trying to get things off the ground here with the potential Māori mentoring initiative. Kia ora.
I have to say, with the backlight, you are positively glowing, Jay.
Oh, sorry,
it's like you have an aura. No, it's fantastic. I wouldn't change a thing.
It looks celestial, so
yeah,
enjoy it.
So let's.
Weird.
And just to be complete, is there anyone else who would like to introduce themselves?
I think we all know each other. Yeah.
I just wanted to give folks the opportunity. So Rian, yours is first up. Would you like to take that first bullet point?
You're on mute.
But I found the mute button. Can you hear me? My internet's a little choppy, otherwise I'll have to go. Good. Okay, project board, we're getting somewhere. Things are cleaning up. We now have some workflows created. Thanks, Nate, for pointing me in the right way. So all issues and PRs being created in the mentoring and in the TAG contributor strategy repos now automatically get added to the new column, which basically shows us what we need to attend to. But at the moment, the new column, so what I've done is in the process, I've filled up the new column with all issues that was living in those repos, all issues and PRs that's open. The idea why I left it there and not in backlog is I want us to go through it and groom and see whether things are still valid, whether they're stale, whether they should be closed. So for mentoring, there is 8 issues at the moment that's open that says in the new column. So we should just check, are they still valid? If they're valid and nobody's going to work on them, just find the right column for them, stick them in there. So if we can work through that, I think maybe at the end of the meeting, if we're through all the issues, maybe we can look at it together. I am busy. Basically, when you see me on, you won't see me on Friday because it's a public holiday in New Zealand and it's my wife's birthday, so I won't be on that call. But I've got the same topics on for Friday's meeting. Again, asking let's groom this, let's clean up. So I am busy closing issues that are obviously covered already and things that I'm not 100% sure. I put them up in the agenda for let's get consensus and close these. So we basically just have the real work left inside the repo. Then you'll also see if you go to the project board during the governance meeting, we did some changes to the board and we added one or two columns, but there's an explanation at the top of everything. Nothing is cast in stone. So we'll work with this, see how it goes for us. And if we want to change a column or a description or anything, we can work with that in the next few months till it flows nicely. Any questions on that?
None from me. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate you doing that work. It can be tricky, and I appreciate that you went with the workflows rather than individual repo PRs, because for stuff like that, I always like to try and keep the doing of the thing as close to the place that wants the thing done as possible. So having something brought onto a board, I appreciate you doing it from the board.
So a full self-embarrassment enclosure. It took me 2 days to figure out how on earth to make that GitHub action work, because I haven't done them before. Got the thing working, got the PR out, and they said, there's an easier way, just do a workflow. That took like 20 minutes. But now I know, now I can make a GitHub action. So training for me. Other point that I did not, exactly. We learn, that's why we're here. And then labeling of issues, I didn't mention that. So if we can just try and label all issues, that help us with the sorting of issues in the project board. And that is my story.
For issues, for labels for issues and whatnot, at least on the mentoring repo, that's all controlled by the .github/settings.yaml file. So you're welcome to open up PRs to add labels if you feel that the labeling is currently deficient. So I'm happy to see those PRs come in.
There is actually a point in Friday's meeting, if I can jump on that just briefly. They have been discussing in Slack, and we kind of Joss and Dawn gave some very good feedback, but we didn't move forward. So I just added the agenda so we can quickly close that to add a label for specific for the chopwood carry water things that Ali and I and other people, our own work that we do internally, that we can label that properly and sort that. Thanks for giving me the space. I'm done.
Okay, moving on, just a couple of quick program updates. LFX term 2 is humming right along. Midterm evaluations are due tomorrow. We've got a few in. I'll probably poke folks today or tomorrow morning to make sure that people get those in. I do have an interesting case that I'd like to discuss potentially offline. But I'd like advice on policy around illness. If someone gets sick and can't, either a mentee or a mentor, and can't complete a term, what do we do? I don't think that, like first, I think our programs are getting large enough now that it's an eventuality that someone will unfortunately find themselves in this situation. I have one person who might fit in this category right now, and I'm currently exploring options with their mentors and looking at Linux Foundation policy. But if there isn't policy, then I'd like to write suggested policy, so it would be worthwhile to have that discussion at some point, and I would like feedback from this group on that. Google Summer of Code, again, humming along. Midterm evaluations are due July 14th, so that's a couple of days away yet. The evals for that just opened up a couple of days ago, and we have maybe about a third of evals in already. So that's going well. And I believe this next one is Catherine from you.
Yeah, so lots of really cool updates from our Deaf and Hard of Hearing initiative. So we updated the issue this week with, actually last week, with the audience and mission goals. Also scheduled our very first official meeting. The CNCF is providing a ALS, oh, this should be ASL, if someone can update that, interpreter with captions, gallery view, and so on. So it's also, the recording is also kind of understandable for people who do not hear. And it's going to be on the 4th Tuesday of each month at 5 p.m. So really excited about that. But our focus is on recruiting more deaf and hard of hearing because we really want this program to be driven by them. I don't know if some of you saw the email to the TOC mailing list that I sent today, or no, yesterday. So basically we have different audiences that we're trying to reach, and ideally we would want to have people in each of these audiences. For instance, for students, it would be good to have people in faculty, right? For people who are in tech but not in cloud native but would like to get there, get people who fit in that category, right? To understand like what are the hurdles and so on. And so yeah, definitely we need to get more people to kind of shape what like the initiatives themselves. So that's why we kickstarted a social media campaign. And it's really cool to see that we actually got 2 new members out of that campaign. Of course, it helps that we are leading with our deaf members because they know, of course, more deaf people. But yeah, really excited to see 2 new members. And then I linked to the different social media posts because if you haven't done so, please share within your network. And also really excited to hear that one of the members is going to attend their very first KubeCon ever. So I don't know, I haven't asked specifically, but I'm hoping or thinking maybe it has to do with the whole initiative as well, and that they feel like more encouraged and welcome to do so. And also Chris Anichek encouraged members to apply for scholarships and said that it could be geared towards, because I asked like, would that also apply? Could we provide interpreters if they want to attend, right? And he said like, it should be possible. So there's never a guarantee, as we know, with scholarships, but like encourage people to register, to apply. And the interesting thing as well, like while we talked, and that's why it's so important to have people from that community, we found gaps. For instance, the scholarship, the registration form at KubeCon does not have any information, and it's not even asking if people are disabled and if they need accommodation. Super important, we ask for that. And then the scholarship does ask someone like, are you disabled? And then was asked like, if are you a person of color and blah, all these different categories, right? And disability was one, then, but doesn't like follow up saying like, what kind of disabilities and do you need any accommodation? And then I was like, okay, what if someone is deaf and you say you're disabled? Is it like, the CNCF doesn't know, is it, do we need a wheelchair? Like, does it have to be accessible with wheelchair? Or like, no, like if it's someone who's deaf, you have to understand like this person actually needs help understanding. So I forwarded that. Yeah, I'm hoping that during these conversations, as all these things start to crystallize, that we may not necessarily think of, right? Because we don't really know people from that community. And I think that's
awesome. Thank you for spearheading that. This is great work, and I'm glad to hear that the KubeCon and CNCF is helping out in this.
Oh, sorry, quickly.
Sure.
So Catherine, I see that we're staggering social media posts as well. So let me know when you want me to jump in. I see we've sort of prioritized a couple of the members already. So happy to jump in when timing works.
Yeah, I think I'm going to make a little calendar because someone else asked. I want to prioritize first the people who are deaf, of course, and then put us at the end.
Yeah,
And
perfect.
so I'm going to make a little schedule. And then whenever a new person joins, they kind of jump the line and then we get pushed towards the end. But I think it's totally fine. But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Thank you.
So just an agenda note. I believe it was Josh brought up whether or not we should talk about the signals policy. So I've added that at the end of the agenda. I think that was, I brought it up as a something that was just top of mind for me, but it is something that we should probably officially add to the agenda. So I've done that. Moving on with the existing agenda, mentorship, statistics and reporting. Diane Miller has been working with Josh, Dawn, and myself on trying to figure out our numbers and how to report those. But we have run into a bit of a snag in that while she has participated for quite some time on the tag contributor strategy side, I'm not sure that you have, or she has an official role. And so we have been discussing potentially adding a tech lead role for the mentoring working group that would allow her to have an official space on here that we could then say, okay, officially a part of this, working on statistics and reporting, and as a sort of a member would then have the ability to be added to things like the Google Drive with all of the spreadsheets and data and whatnot. So I would like to both propose a new position and nominate someone to it, but I'm not sure that we have a process for that. And so this is a bit ad hoc.
Yeah. So it's just, and I've been working with Nate one-on-one and with Josh and Dawn and Nate in a group, and we've been chatting probably for almost 3 weeks now in the Slack channel. And it is a bit of a roadblock. What I'm trying to do is create some dashboards for tracking some of the questions around mentorship, whether or not people have contributed to other CNCF projects after, prior, during their tenure during the mentorship, which other ones beyond the ones that they initially signed up to do, and a little bit about the year, how they're working, how their career went. And so right now, we've just been focusing on the mentees, but there's also the effect on the mentors, how that helped boost their careers as coaches and internally. So we're trying to figure out that. And some of it's just right now, I think we've got the data cleaned up between Nate and I's discovery process, but it was a bit of a haul to do it without having, because of GDPR and everything else. And it would be nice to be able to get that SQL dump direct and not have some of the, I think there's a little bit of cut and paste typos in order to give me the cleaned up, not deprivatized stuff. And pretty much everybody who's on those lists, all the information that I have already de-anonymizes them anyways, because of the tools that I use, and most of the data is in public domain anyways. So I would really appreciate it. And then I would make a commitment to coming on the monthly basis to the mentoring meeting and sharing those stats and our findings and helping to use those to drive some better practices or better enhancements to the mentoring process. There's already been some really cool insights that we've sort of derived just from cleaning up the data. So it's been fun, and it's sort of, you know, my version of crossword puzzles in my semi-retirement.
So I'd like to throw it out to, sorry to interrupt Josh.
I was going to say, what I'll say is we haven't had tech leads named to any specific working groups before, but there's no reason why we couldn't.
I wonder if we could piggyback on the process of a tag level tech lead, because you have that process, or we could look to build out that process for the mentoring working group as well. And I think Paris, you had a comment in the chat as well. I'm kind of indifferent as to where the process lives, but I do think that it's important to codify it wherever it lives.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't, for the other working groups, we don't actually have role names for the working groups. Y'all in the mentoring one specifically call out chairs. The TOC just approves the existence of named working groups. They don't approve members or anything. But that means that you can basically do whatever you want. If you want to have, if Diane wants to be listed as tech lead there, and wants to do tech lead things for mentoring, you absolutely can do that. And then we'll, confirm it at the meeting on Thursday and make it official.
Okay. And so that it would be so what I'm hearing is open up an issue or a PR describing the role, nominating Diane, and then add that to the Thursday tag level meeting. It would be a PR against CNCF/mentoring, but discussed and approved at the tag level.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the fastest way since we have a meeting on Thursday, and that way you don't have to wait for your next mentoring meeting.
Yeah. I'll be at that meeting too. So
yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, so just create a PR and you and Jay should +1 it.
yeah, and to Paris's question about why don't I just be the tech lead for the whole tag, there's lots of reasons I could do that. I'm supposed to be semi-retired, and this is very much top of mind and interest to me. So let's start with mentoring and see where it goes.
We'll take all of the time that you offer. So be careful how much time you offer.
Oh, I know.
People have made that mistake with me before. They're like, "Can I help?" Oh boy, yes, you can. Okay, so let's thank you for helping clarify process. I'll add something to do for myself to open that, and I'll ping Jay on getting a +1 on there. Moving on to news. Speaking of Jay, I believe you're up for New Zealand updates.
Cool. I'll make mine pretty quick. So just received an invite to speak at Kubernetes Community Day in Sydney next month, and just asked what they'd like me to speak about, and the suggestion was obviously the mentoring working group and perhaps reference to tags in general. So yeah, in the first instance, just wanted to open it to if there was any other talking points around that. Obviously the deaf and hard of hearing one would be a good one to reference, but if there's any sorts of thoughts or focus areas in that in general, it would, open to any input. Don't have to do that now, but just putting it out there. In addition to that, so I'm also looking to bring our intern from II, Abby, who's been really active in supporting me with some of this sort of stuff in terms of just raising awareness of open source and CNCF and mentoring efforts in general. She's starting to come into the schools with me at the moment, and will also be leading an activation in September with Shadow Tech. It's a national event to encourage more females into the tech space. So just working on some activations and things at the moment, and the same deal for our annual regional Canvas Careers Expo, which is next month. So again, I think it's just a whole wider thing around what is, if there's any sort of specific messaging or bases that we want to cover with everyone's collective efforts, which is going to be relevant to our target audiences. And the training and cert stuff, I won't jump into too much at the moment. It's a little bit premature, but basically looking at how we might be able to incorporate some of that sort of stuff, doing some more work with the local tertiary education providers and building a relationship with the university on a couple of fronts, specifically around cloud-based data sovereignty. So yeah, just exploring the scope there to hopefully have some more Linux-based stuff at least introduced into curriculum. But yeah, it's a bit fresh at the moment, so I'll park that for now. But if there's any ideas around the wider stuff, yeah, please let me know. That's it for me.
I'll leave it open here for a couple of seconds if anybody does have any comments or suggestions for Jay now.
I'll share a brief out for KCD for next month anyway. I'll create a doc or something like that about the general sort of focus that I've got in mind for that. So maybe that might be easier for everyone to sort of feed into as well. But yeah, keep
Well, thank you so much.
Good.
Okay. Moving on to our next agenda item, Paris. I think you've added this, and I'll hand it to you.
Hey y'all, so nice seeing your faces. This is a topic that I have only dropped little droplets around town about. It's something that we worked hard on in Kubernetes land, and I wanted to see A, what the appetite was for this group, B, if anybody here would be willing to help me, and C, just have a general discussion around creating programs that are not one-on-one mentoring related, but still have the same mentoring mission and vision of growing new contributors, but then also focusing programs on the contributors that you currently have and how to grow them into maintainer roles. So I'm thinking like documentation, templates, maintainer circles, all kinds of things. Some of those programs could be contributor AMAs on a monthly basis, which is something we did kind of like in the middle of Kubernetes hype cycle, where we were constantly having major maintainers on and then having 50 to 100 people join us live for the podcast, which is scale. Because I do think that once you reach a certain project height and project growth, that one-on-one mentoring is just no longer viable for your project anymore. I do think that one-on-one initiatives are very good for smaller projects that can take the time out. But when you're dealing with 1,000+ contributors, I think one-on-one can kind of bog things down a lot. You may have already seen that with your efforts with LFX and things like that. So I don't know, I'm just kind of trying to think of how to get started with this stuff, where to get started with this stuff, and ideally pick up someone from this crew that could help with that. So I know that was kind of ambiguous, but I just wanted to start off with this conversation. I've been meaning to come to this meeting for a while. So thanks for having me.
No, you're always welcome. Thank
Yeah.
you for coming.
Go ahead, Nate.
Sorry, I was going to say, just as a starting point, we're not even at a point where it's one-to-one at this point. Generally speaking, it's many-to-one in that there are, I think, an average of about 1.5 or almost 2 mentors per mentee in at least the LFX program, and the same thing in Google Summer of Code. So we're already spending quite a lot. We're not even at one-to-one, we're at many-to-one for mentors to mentees. And if we can get even that to like a one-to-one level, or reversing the one-to-many, like having like one mentor for several mentees, that could be interesting, because you're right. Right now there's a lot of maintainer and contributor effort in mentoring somebody for the 12-week programs that we're doing. We did that sort of specifically to relieve pressure on maintainer folks specifically, because it used to be, we said, okay, maintainers had to be the primary mentors, and we've relaxed that to say, okay, maintainers have to like approve of the project and assert, yes, these are contributors who are in good standing, and then let the contributors be the primary mentors. So that's why we had sort of a bit of a ballooning of mentors, but I think it would be definitely worth discussing other options and programs and ways of trying to scale this whole thing. Josh?
We've had it theoretically within scope for this working group for quite a while to start working with projects on adding some other types of mentoring, right? To date, this working group has only dealt with the entry-level managed mentoring programs. So LFX, GSOC, occasionally outreaching. And it's always been within scope to deal with helping projects with other kinds of mentoring. We have not had enough people in the working group for it. From my perspective, one of the first initiatives from a needs perspective would be to actually work with projects on something like the reviewer cohorts that Kubernetes does, you know, in terms of moving up, because a lot of projects are stuck on how do we move people up to maintainer, and aren't really ready to start programs themselves. And that would have the advantage that it works at medium scale as well, right? You don't have to be one of the tiny handful of projects with hundreds of contributors. It still works at the dozens of contributors scale.
Yeah, I mean, I can, what I can do is take a lot of that documentation and see if I could template some of it or make guidance of it instead of, you know, talking to the contributor at, you know, Kubernetes level. Do we feel like that would be a good first step?
Yeah, it's going to also depend on what you want to work on, right? Yeah, that, and if we were going forward with that, the other thing I was thinking of for it to do for that would be getting the CNCF to help us with some kind of sign up tool. Because that's going to be the other part that's a real hassle for maintainers, is kind of tracking who's signing up for it.
We use issues. I mean, just a GitHub issue for Kubernetes as a way to sign up. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely discuss that. Yeah, and I'm happy to sign up and to do this work. I'm doing it in some other projects, so I definitely have it in my scope right now. I would love someone to help me though, just because I think I'll work better with like a rubber duck situation, especially at this level. So if anybody that's listening to the video right now as well, that's not here and wants to help out, I would love it. But yeah, I'll do that as kind of like a first step and then come back to this meeting. It's in 2 weeks, right? Every 2 weeks. I'll come back to this meeting in 2 weeks with something that we can jump off of. But yeah, I mean, reviewer cohorts, contributor AMAs, shadow programs, yeah, all kinds of stuff. I mean, I think there's even an issue now about like a CNCF buddy system or something like that from somebody else. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different ways that we can go in here. I think there's more than one way to crack the mentoring nut. I mean, at the end of the day, if they, I'm also on the team of if you have amazing contributor guide information, that usually is your first step into having a good mentoring program. You know, I mean, you know, Nate with docs. So, you know, having good docs is like the first step in onboarding. So, yeah, so I'll definitely come back. I just wanted to get the appetite for it from this group. You know, I know there, you know, not a lot of folks here helping with other things. Everybody's kind of focused on their own initiatives. So I just wanted to get an appetite. So it sounds like there is one, and I'll get started.
So a couple of things. If you need a rubber duck, I'm happy to have you put some time on my calendar. The other thing, we actually just shifted. We're meeting monthly now for this one, so it's the first Tuesday of every month. And then thirdly, I'd invite you to open either an issue or a discussion. So if you go to CNCF mentoring/discussions, we have, I think, a fairly robust community discussion going on over there for mentoring. And I think this would be a good spot for that type of talk, because then we can bring folks in, and it's not tied to an issue or what, or potentially convert it to one and back and forth. But I think the discussions board might be a good spot for this conversation to get it beyond the scope of this particular meeting. So. Anything else on that topic anybody would like to bring up? Doesn't look like it. Okay, so moving on to the ad hoc part of this, and just looking at time here, I have about 20 minutes left. I would like opinions on a sickness policy. Again, I don't know that we can set it at this point. I think we'd probably need to go through LF legal and all the rest of it. But I am so the scenario that I'm seeing is someone. In this case, it happened to be a mentee, but it could be a mentor, has been ill and is asking for an extension on the term. Now, term extensions are difficult because we have a group of volunteers who are mentoring, and they have obligations outside of their mentorship. So extending the term outside the stated sort of bounds of a term is always a little bit difficult. And this is part of the reason I actually leave a week of a bit of sluff at the end of every term. So I always expect evaluations a week before the term actually ends. This also gives folks time for writing blogs and doing all sorts of other stuff. But if somebody is ill, right, I would hate for the situation to be that they are declined or removed from the program and not paid because somebody fell ill somewhere along the process. So that's my opinion. I would like to have a way of being kind and generous in these types of situations, but I'm still not entirely sure exactly how to handle them. And I've been looking around the Linux Foundation documentation for information and guidance. I haven't found any, so I've actually reached out to other Linux Foundation mentoring administrators to see what they how they handle the situation, if it's come up for them yet. We might be the largest, we are the largest mentoring program in the Linux Foundation. So I think we're going to run into issues like this first and more often. But I'm curious what your thoughts are.
So I was looking at how Google Summer of Code handles this. In the case of GSOC, it really depends on how long we're talking about, right? Like if it's an extension of a couple of weeks, then they generally make it happen. If it's going to be longer than that, then that's generally a reason for canceling the internship. In a couple of cases of demonstrated catastrophe, they've gone ahead, and this is not just illness, but like people who've been in like war zones and stuff. They've gone ahead and done a partial payment to the intern. But like LFX, they can't guarantee mentor availability. I feel like we actually have more flexibility than GSOC does because they have a very rigid schedule. Like for LFX, it would be possible to pay somebody later if they needed to push everything back. Yes. So we have more flexibility than Google Summer Code does from that perspective. Yeah. Which means you can kind of handle it on a case by case basis. Because there's options, right? Which is, first contact the mentors and see what their situation is. For a lot of mentors, yeah, they have other engagements, but their schedule isn't so rigid that they don't have 3 weeks of leeway. In some cases, though, they will, right? If the mentee was working on something that was targeted at an upcoming release and the feature freeze is before the delayed end of the mentorship, then it's going to be a question of whether or not the work is still going to be relevant. when completed. The so I guess one of my question would be, can we just have a flexible policy, which is to say, you know, mentoring will contact the admins and the mentee and see if it's possible to work out some way to have a delayed but completed mentorship. I mean, and I hate to bring this up, but this was one of the reasons for the GSOC, for some of the GSOC policy, which is that we're talking about mentees who are around the world. We don't really have any way to verify their illness status.
This is also true.
You know, particularly if you're talking about things like giving them a you know, a partial payment for a mentorship that they now couldn't work on at all. Because I know that there was some paperwork associated with that for GSOC. Because I had to handle ones where somebody literally was actually imprisoned for most of their mentorship. Was Hong Kong related. You know, and I don't think we're in a position to do that for LFX. So what about a policy that just says, hey, you know, we will try to work something out that allows the mentorship to get completed, you know, for any reasonable delay. You know, but if we can't work something out, then the mentee will be compensated based on what was completed up to that point, right? Like if the illness happens after the halfway point, they keep the halfway payment. And you know, and that's the end of that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you for sharing. The GOC comparison is actually quite apt. That's an interesting avenue that I should look into as well. Again, I like to I want to trust people. Like doing the verification. If somebody tells me they've been ill, I want to believe that they've been ill, but I understand that money being what it is, it's important to have some sort of verification system in place. But I agree, we can leverage our flexibility in these types of cases. And in the case I'm currently dealing with, I have actually reached out. I've been reaching out to both the mentor group as well as LF folks, as well as other CNCF folks to try and figure out how to manage this. And it's a sort of an ongoing process that I don't want to get too into details about, but that what you've just brought up is helpful in clarifying. So thank you for that, Josh. Do we have other thoughts or comments? Does anybody else I almost want to think of the mentoring program a little bit like an academic program, and I tend to look to universities as at least in part an exemplar for some of what we can do. Has anybody else had any experience with this type of issue?
I think that's a good line of thought, Nate. I mean, there are people that are getting paid for, you know, a time scoped activity in academia. I also agree to Josh's kind of question about put in policy around like how much time off, you know, like, is it a week of sick? Like somebody have COVID, 5 days, you know, hopefully 5 days anyway. Or, you know, is it a month, which if it's a 3-month scope deal is 1/3 of the project, which is significant. Maybe even like think about a ratio or something, like 1/3 of the project. But yeah, no, I agree that researching what academia do sounds really good.
Another thing I was thinking in terms of our flexibility for LFX, and again, I can only talk to GSOC will have its own program, so this is only stuff that we can affect. But currently, you can only apply. You can only have one term in the LFX, for instance. So if someone becomes ill and can't complete it, I'm wondering if we relax that ruling as well and saying, hey, all right, well, we accepted you once, you got sick and couldn't complete it. Should we allow them to reapply given they were unable to complete or did not finish? I'd like to think that we probably could, but I wouldn't like to guarantee a second go at it. I think that because it's the maintainers are sort of the key. I wouldn't want to foist someone on to a maintainer, right? I wouldn't want to guarantee it.
Yeah, I think that would be my follow-up too, is like from a return perspective, like are the maintainers just then going to pick up the work and finish it? You know, like I guess it also depends on, you know, like how important is the work to the project as well. Obviously, you shouldn't necessarily give an intern, you know, the bread and butter work, you know, or the highest priority things. But I mean, they could be giving things that are like dependencies, you know, of something else that they're working on. So yeah, I think the other follow-up there is like, from a return perspective, is the work still going to be there? Is the work still going to be present?
And where, not that I have searched unendingly, but where are the rules around the LFX mentees not having a second air? Because there are at least 2 mentees that have gone on to do second projects that, you know, so there is some flexibility there already. So I'm just wondering what the wording is. And I know you and I, Nate, have discussed this a little bit, but I'm just curious where the rules are.
I can grab the link there. Hold on a second. And if there is a situation where I'm going to put the rules in the doc just real quick here. If someone has done 2 terms, that was frankly an oversight. That was accidental. From my understanding, you can apply for up to 3 things at a time, and you can be accepted into the LFX program once. So if you're declined, then we'll allow you to apply for 3 more things the next semester, and so on and so forth. But you can only participate once. We have thousands of people applying, so it's hard to.
All right.
It's hard for it to be considered fair if one person is doing several.
And I'm just curious, like what the circumstances were around those 2. Maybe they
That
were
could be
key
part of it, too.
projects. Yeah, they might have been key projects that they needed more time to finish or complete.
Right.
I have no idea.
Yeah, or just alternately, because the actual management tool is extremely rudimentary. It's quite possible that nobody knew until you looked at this data that they had actually done 2.
Or maybe this came up before and somebody said, hey, you know what? You were sick. Let's try again.
Yeah.
Who knows at this point?
Yeah, but if you can only have 1 as a normal policy, like if you're documenting this flexible policy, what I would say is you would add that as a possible outcome, right? Is that, you know, they might effectively have a redo, right? If the mentors liked them a lot and they weren't really able to complete anything, they might have a redo, which if the mentors are into it is actually a benefit for them, right? Because interviewing new mentees is a pain.
Yeah.
But that it's all going to be circumstantial because each one's going to be different.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. This was really helpful for helping me clarify my thought, and Again, I think that this is all going to have to go up through LFX, but I will keep folks sort of apprised of what we do and how we're doing it. Wherever I can, I will, again, because it's a CNCF or an LF policy, I may not be able to have folks outside of the LF affected, but I will try and keep this as open a process as I possibly can, because I think it's how we roll. So again, just looking at time, we're at about 7 minutes to the top of the hour. Is there anything else that anybody would like to bring up? Any comments, questions, concerns, other topics that we've missed that we really ought to have touched on?
Just a reminder from my side that all the issues from mentoring that's in the new column, as to if we can move them out to wherever they need to go.
Okay, I think just because everybody is talking about Bill Ballard as well, I am expecting I'll be there, but I'm not 100% sure just yet. I really do want to go though. So everybody take a look at boards, and I think enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate everyone participating. This is it's great to see so many folks. Oh my goodness, Rohan, I'm sorry, I didn't notice that you were there. Hello, welcome, and sorry, I didn't welcome you until 2 minutes before the close of the meeting. Is there anything that you wanted to bring up before we closed out here? And if you're shy, you're welcome to use the chat feature rather than speaking on cam or on microphone. Sorry, Zoom did me a disservice. I didn't even notice you there. I apologize.
All right.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed your visit. I hope it was helpful for you. And so I think with that, take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Awesome.
Have a good day.
Thanks
Cheers.
all.